What would you do for $20 million? Google Lunar X Prize offered this award to the first privately funded team in the world who could land a robotic spacecraft on the moon, travel 500 meters, and transmit high-definition video and images back to Earth. And for the team from Israel, they weren't rocket scientists. They were just like you and me. This sounds like the greatest project-based learning opportunity ever. I mean, who wouldn't love to go to the moon, to be the first non-governmental group to achieve this? But who has the gumption and tenacity to think that they really could? The success of this mission is based on the very components of project-based learning. Now, project-based learning is a student-centered pedagogy that involves a dynamic classroom approach in which it is believed that the students acquire a deeper knowledge through active exploration of real-world challenges. Students learn about a subject by working for an extended period of time to investigate and respond to a complex question. It's a style of active learning and inquiry-based learning, according to Wikipedia. But if you didn't know that, it's according to me. Project-based learning recognizes that the success of learning starts with the subject. The subject is not math or science or any of the like. The subject of learning is the student, with a focus on their relationship to the challenges set in front of them, and the process they go through to solve the challenge. This means that it will be the student that leads the project of determining how to get to the moon, how to design a spacecraft that can withstand pressure and heat and cold and can maneuver from one axis to another without using up too much fuel, only to mention a few of the obstacles. The Google Lunar X Prize was created with two goals in mind: to spur affordable access to the moon, and to inspire the next generation of scientists, engineers, space explorers, and adventurers to enter the STEM fields. That is exactly what happened in America for a previous generation during the Apollo missions. Called the Apollo effect, just the thought of going to the moon jump-started the interest of math and science and physics for many young people in America. By reaching for the moon, Israel was hoping for the same. This is exciting. To offer our students a project of which they can lead the development could shake them from this pandemic-era computer screen stupor. If the work the students share becomes their own work rather than a set of preconceived worksheets, they'll feel empowered to further their own research. Do we expect the students to build a spaceship? No. But by delving into this project, they start asking big questions on their own. They could retell the story in the target language of your choice. The learners could be in a multi-level classroom working in groups or as individuals. The novice learners could share the facts of the story, while the more intermediate students could dive deeper into the methods used by the other countries, comparing their spacecrafts and missions, or describing their successes and failures. So what is this story? The Google Lunar X Prize competition started with 33 teams from Israel, their team was called C.R.E.D, the US, Japan, India, Italy, Romania, Malaysia, Germany, Russia, Spain, Hungary, Brazil, Canada, Chile, and 5 international teams. None of the 33 teams were able to verify launch contracts by the end of 2016 in order to remain in the competition. Only a handful decided to continue, with or without the prize. Since then, only one reached the moon. Let's hear from Yariv Bash, one of the 3 co-founders of C.R.E.D, who started his journey with a post on Facebook.
Yariv is a 39-year-old electronics engineer from Israel. One day he had this idea. Why not do something crazy? Why not send something to the moon? So he opened his laptop, went to Facebook and typed,
"Who wants to go to the moon?"
2 of his friends replied to his post and said yes. And the 3 of them started working on one of humanity's hardest missions, to land on the moon.
Kids need all kinds of role models. I think that today it's needed more than ever. It's about building ourselves a better future. One thing that my grandfather taught me was choose something that you'll be good at and then just follow your dreams. And my grandfather was in Auschwitz back in 1944. During that time, the Germans chose a group of metal workers and engineers from Auschwitz to be taken to assemble the V1 and V2 rockets. That way he managed to survive. He had a wife and a 5-year-old daughter that died during the Holocaust. When I was young, he always brought me those do-it-yourself kits to assemble, and we would sit down and assemble them together. He had a very strong impact on my decision to become an engineer. Sadly, I too have grown in a region that has lots of divisions. I felt that I'm in this world to make peaceful and positive things that will help to advance humanity.
Well, good. Yeah, right.
And now we're trying to send a spacecraft to the moon. Building something that will go to the moon, that's like the ultimate experience for a maker.
Oh, we'll take it to the moon.
We were one of the last teams to register at the race. And one of the things that we came up was to have just one machine to hover above the surface of the moon. Everything becomes a bit more simpler. And that was the first huge step that we made on our way to the moon.
And touchdown.
It is rocket science.
Scientists and engineers, these are the people that move the world forward. מה שאני רוצה זה שכשאתם תהיו גדולים, אולי חלק מכם יחשבו שמדע זה מגניב ולהיות מהנדסים זה מגניב, אבל מה שמאוד הייתי רוצה זה שתגדלו ותחשבו איך אתם עוזרים לשפר את העולם, איך אתם עוזרים לבנות בעצם משהו יותר מגניב בעולם הזה. We have to push forward with those inspiration stories if we want more engineers and scientists. We live in a very harsh environment with very unknown factors surrounding us. If we can manage to solve the problems on this part of the world will be a much better place. When you see the Earth from space, you can't see any borders. You just see one planet filled with people. When people realize most of their time is being spent on useless things, as fighting, that's when things will change. My grandfather taught me to be always optimistic. For me, sending a spacecraft to the moon represents that everything is possible, that the human spirit will win.
Were you thinking about how to use this contest in your classroom? One student may be interested in the science or technology or engineering and math, the STEM of this topic, while another may be more interested in the humanities behind the people who dared to try to build a spaceship and launch it to the moon. Pause for a quick reflection on Hebrew. After all, this is the language of the innovators and dreamers behind Space.il. We know Hebrew to be both an ancient biblical language as well as a modern, vibrant one. But I don't remember the word spacecraft anywhere in the Bible. Like the story we just learned, when an opportunity arises, something new is created. In this case, a new word. The word spacecraft wasn't in the Hebrew lexicon originally, yet the word for space, outer space, the heavens was. The word was halal. By adding the suffix "it," which denotes something small in Hebrew, the new vocabulary word became chalalitz. This space object, compared to space itself, is very small indeed. Did you hear the other Hebrew in that video? The first word there is the name of the spacecraft, Bereshit. The word Bereshit means in the beginning. Now, many of you know that Hebrew is the ancient language of the Old Testament. The word Bereshit is the first word of the Bible and talks about creation. To have this ancient word become the name of a spacecraft dispels any notion that we're still living in ancient times. Our language has had to grow with the times as well. What words could your students think of that had to be created in order to talk about this subject? I know that jet propulsion was not discussed in the Bible. Modernizing a language could be one of the subjects one of your students talks about. Okay, so far we've talked about the math and the science and the hardcore data to reach the moon. What happened next?
Imagine you'd like to build a car for the first time in your life, and you have to build the car from scratch until it's working, ready to travel 500 miles without trying it a single time before you get into the car and start driving.
But what's even harder is the money science. To send anything to space, you need billions of dollars. And they didn't have much money. And when they asked people for money, they got no after no after no after no. Nobody wanted to invest in space, but they persisted. And the few people that took a chance on them gave them money and helped them to make this dream come true. And raised $100 million in donations for this project. It sounds like a lot, but $100 million is the cheapest ever spacecraft that made it to the moon. And this money they used not only to build a spacecraft, but to also educate kids. Hundreds of thousands of kids from all ages, all races and religions were inspired by their crazy dream and thought that they too could land on the moon. Because their real mission is not to land on the moon, but to inspire millions of kids to pursue science.
It's not enough to land on the moon. We need to show kids that they can build spacecraft and land on the moon too and do the impossible.
On April 11th, 2019, after hundreds of setbacks, thousands of no's, and millions of space kilometers, the spacecraft got very close to the moon, took a historic selfie, sent it back to Earth, and crashed. Due to engine problems, the landing failed right as it touched the moon. But this wasn't a failure. This was just a setback. And for Yariv, it wasn't the only one. 2 years ago, Yariv got into a skiing accident and got paralyzed from the waist down. Doctors said he will be chair-bound for the rest of his life. So, he went to his desktop and logged to Facebook again. This time, he wrote,
No worries. First, we'll put a spacecraft on the moon. Then, we'll fix my legs.
Not many people get back up after a setback or two, but those who do make the impossible come true. On the first try, or the second one.
Now our project-based learning has taken a very human turn. We turn our attention from STEM to the humanities. Words of expression from world languages flood our minds to come to terms with what happened to both the mission and more so, this productive, incredible man's life. Yariv's acceptance of who he is today is similar to the end of this chapter with Space.io, and with his uniquely Israeli entrepreneurial spirit, keep an eye out for his new innovations that will make our world more accessible. Both Yariv and Space.io suffered huge challenges and perhaps disappointments, but should they be considered failures?
היה לנו עצוב, אבל זה לא משנה, ידענו שהצלחנו, שיגרנו חללית לירח. כשיוצאים לדרך ארוכה, אי אפשר לדעת מה יישאר עד הסוף. האמת היא שאלו שמנסים לפרוץ יכולים לדעת רק דבר אחד בוודאות. יהיו כישלונות בדרך להצלחה. זה קורה לכל מי שמנסה. מעבר להגעה עצמה לירח, המטרה הייתה לעודד חלומות אצל אנשים צעירים. קיבלנו מילדים, ממש כמוכם, המון מכתבי תמיכה. קיבלנו פרגון אדיר מאנשי וסוכניות החלל מכל העולם. תכלס, עשינו היסטוריה. שיגרנו את החללית הפרטית הראשונה בעולם. ואנחנו המדינה השביעית שהגיעה לירח.
World language instructors know that failing or false starts are all part of the process of learning and succeeding. Open your mouths and speak, we beg of our students to try to communicate. We implore them to just try the sounds of something new. The grammar will come in time, just try to make a connection. The reward will be great. And it is. Beyond the language is a mindset. Hopefully our time here together has offered a viable teaching tool and a project you haven't heard about before. On behalf of Benny Swislow, the iCenter, and myself, as well as Yariv, Kafir, and Yonatan, thank you in advance for your hard work and determination. You can scan this code with your phone to learn more about the 5 C's of foreign language learning, and for more information on Space.io and their next mission, visit theicenter.org/spaceil.